This is the largest weapon the world has ever seen, a machine so massive it required its own custom railway system just to exist. Known as the Heavy Gustav, it was built from 1,350 tons of steel and featured a barrel 32 meters long. For comparison, it stood as tall as a 4-story building. The ammunition was equally monumental. These armor-piercing shells weighed 7 tons each, roughly the same as a modern school bus, and were designed to tear through 6 meters of reinforced concrete. This was the physical manifestation of Adolf Hitler's obsession with scale, a project he personally commissioned to push German military engineering to its absolute limit. Hitler's mandate was born from a specific obstacle, the Maginot Line. This was a vast chain of French fortifications and concrete strongholds that stood directly in the path of a German invasion. In 1937, the Krupp Steel Works began forging the cannon under total secrecy, with the goal of having the superweapon ready for the invasion of France by 1940, but the project missed its deadline. By the time the Gustav was nearing completion, the German army had already bypassed the Maginot Line through the Ardennes forest, conquering France without the big guns' help. With no bunkers left to smash in the West, Hitler redirected the weapon to the Soviet Union in 1942, targeting the world's strongest fortress at Sebastopol. At 1,350 tons, the Heavy Gustav was physically immobilized by its own mass. It could not simply roll onto a battlefield like a standard piece of artillery. This map shows how the weapon had to be dismantled just to travel. It was loaded onto 5 separate trains, totaling 100 railcars, and dragged through Poland to reach the front. Reassembling the gun required 4,000 workers laboring for 3 days. To operate, guard, and maintain it, the Nazis had to dedicate an additional 1,500 soldiers to the site. To hide a 4-story structure from enemy aircraft, a 500-man smoke troop was deployed to shroud the entire area in artificial fog. Before it fired a single shot, the Gustav had already tied up over 5,000 people, creating a massive logistical footprint that required its own railway tracks and specialized infrastructure. The design of the carriage meant the cannon lacked a turret. The barrel was fixed in a forward-facing position, unable to pivot left or right to track a target. This schematic shows the solution, the firing curve. Soldiers had to lay 1,200 meters of parallel, curved tracks at the firing site, so the entire weapon could be moved to adjust its aim. 2 diesel locomotives would slowly push the 1,350-ton frame along the curve, which in turn sweeps the barrel's line of fire across the target area. Any adjustment to the aim required a coordinated effort between the locomotives and the track crew, making the process of finding a target agonizingly slow. After weeks of setup, the crew finally fired a 7-ton shell toward Fort Stalin, generating a shockwave that could be felt for miles. The shell slammed into the ground 120 meters away from the fortress, leaving a massive crater in the dirt but doing no damage to the intended target. It took nearly an hour to reload. The second shot missed by 150 meters. Shot after shot followed, with the same lack of results. Despite the labor of 5,000 men and weeks of preparation, the weapon could not consistently hit a stationary fortress the size of a city block. Over 5 days of combat, the Heavy Gustav fired 48 shots, 360 tons of ammunition at the Soviet defenses. Only 1 hit was ever confirmed, an underguard ammunition depot. Even that strike was likely the result of chance rather than precision. As this field gun illustrates, the stresses of heavy artillery are immense. On the Gustav, the forces required to launch a 7-ton shell wore out the massive barrel after just a few dozen shots, rendering the weapon useless. The weapon's theoretical power never translated to the battlefield. Its accuracy was too low to hit its targets, and its barrel was too fragile to survive the firing process. While Sevastopol eventually fell to the German army, the Heavy Gustav played no significant role in the victory. The project consumed massive amounts of steel, labor, and transport capacity for no measurable gain, serving only as a propaganda piece for Hitler's vision of German machinery. To prevent the weapon from being captured as the war turned against them, Hitler personally ordered the cannon destroyed, ending the story of his largest and most ineffective weapon.